haven't knocked any drinks over. Now, before I slaughter Steve, I think I would like to also extend my thanks to all you that made it here today to make this wonderful occasion for not only to Steve and Claire, but to their parents and to our parents. And I just thank you for helping to make this day happen. And also got to, if I could make a small dedication to a lady that couldn't be here today, and that is mine and Steve's Nana. Now, I know if Nana was here, she'd be the life and soul of the party. Now, when we're all dancing later, she'd be the ones dancing on the tables and getting us all around the dance floor to dance. So I had a small poem sent to me by my mother that I would like to read out, and it's called The Wedding Ring. Smaller than a farthing, just a plain gold band, a symbol of devotion worn upon the hand. Like a million others, not a costly thing, nothing rare or showy, just a wedding ring. Yet that little circle holds the world for two, love forever faithful, hearts forever true. Token of a promise given joyously, two lives joined together for eternity. Thank you, Mum, for sending that. I was really appreciate it. Got to make a quick dedication to the gorgeous bridesmaids that helped get Claire to the chapel on time. Now, it was my understanding of weddings that it was normally the bride and groom that were traditionally late. You know, the groom is in the pub having a last couple of drinks on his own, and the bride's having a makeup panic. I was very shocked when the parents of the families strolled up 15 minutes late. So, more than surprising, because Dad is one who's always very insistent on getting there early. So, well, thank you for that. Thanks for being late.
Makes it memorable.
And also, I think, obviously, to thank Steve and Claire, and mainly, I think, because we've not had to endure that god-awful Diamond Jubilee that's been going on. I was quite surprised when Steve asked me that one evening in Rope Hall at about 2:30 to be his best man. And I just thought, what, don't you have any mates? Now, in all fairness, Steve is a cracking elder brother to have, and he was very helpful for when I was growing up, him being a fair bit older than me. And one of the main things I remember him doing, helping me, was teaching me how to fight. Now, as you can tell, me and Steve are both very, intimidating looking hard people, so of course we had to learn somewhere. And I remember I was about 4 years old, and I think Steve had just started Broughton High School, and he was giving the big eye on the big man on campus, telling he's going around beating all the year 11s up. And he's in the garden, he's teaching me how to box, so he's getting the guard up and everything, and giving me a clip round the ear to just keep me on my guard. Well, unfortunately, Steve let his guard down, and I whacked him straight in the face. And obviously, I'd love to know how he managed to describe that to his mates on the next day.
There were 10 of them.
Yeah, they were beating up an old lady, weren't they? And this wouldn't be the same without sort of a mention to that time that I unfortunately put Steve in accident emergency. And unfortunately, thankfully, it wasn't on the stag do. It was one summer when I think we'd just come back from our summer holidays. Mum and Dad are sick of us, they want us to go back to school, and me and Steve are just as bored. Now, Steve was watching, I think it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the TV. He's lying on the couch, and this guy never used to get up from lying on the couch. It would either take him food to get up on the couch or a cup of tea, and he never would do. So I go downstairs, start winding him up, and like you do, I can get away with it because I'm the younger one. But unfortunately, Steve flipped and started chasing me. I've been a bit smaller, I can sort of wiggle around through the furniture. Unfortunately, Steve got his foot caught on the dresser, cut the skin open, and unfortunately, we ended up down A&E. Now, as you well know, Steve is a man who loves his flash things. He's got a lovely flash BMW. It wasn't always the case for him driving around a nice car. I remember just after passing his test, he was driving the family Volvo, which Steve, as you know, is a very persuasive man, and he managed to persuade Mum and Dad to let him drive this Volvo. Now, it was either a case of driving the A-Reg Astra, which I can understand why he didn't want to drive it now. But I think it was one Friday, and I think he'd been sent out shopping, because he's got to do something useful with the car for once, so he's in a bit of a mood. And it was absolutely chucking it down that night. Now, this Volvo was the car that used to take us all on holiday, and it was just the best car we've ever had. And as you know, Volvos are very strong cars, but this one, Steve had other ideas. And he was just about to leave the Asda car park, and this was in Preston, turns in the wet and skids into the wall. Now, I don't know what you were thinking, but that's the only Volvo I know that has ever been written off at 5 miles an hour.
Long car.
I hope Steve don't mind me saying this, but he does like a drink. And he's always loved to drink Budweiser, much to the dismay of my dad, me, and our family and our friends, because we all drink real ale. Now, I thought, what sort of took him away from drinking real ale and drinking that American rubbish? And I think it was an instant when he was probably at that age, when he was old enough to go and watch football in North End on his own, go off on the coach, on the supporters club coach. And he can go away without dad, go with his mates and just have a good time watching North End get beaten some godforsaken southern town. And he strolls up into this bar, all confident, eyes up the barmaid, looks at the bar and thinks, what drink can I order which is going to make me look like I'm over 18? Looks at the lager, that's what all the nippers drink. Looks at the cider, once again, that's what all the nippers drink. And his eyes go over to the relay, so he goes over, barmaid comes over, and Steve goes, I'll have 4 pints of IPA, please. Barmaid turns round and says, it's IPA actually, mate. Asked him frightening and serves him out. Now, Steve's phonetic discrepancies have dogged him a little bit further in his life, especially when it comes to ordering food. And it was one sort of posh family meal in the Italian Orchard in Preston, and I think Steve's of the age now. He's got a degree from I think one of the great unis. I think it's Huddersfield, isn't it? Sorry. Yeah, so he's reading the menu. The waiter comes over and wants the starter in order. And Steve goes, I'll have some pate, please. The waiter, really bemused, asks him to clarify. Steve answers pate. No look. I think it wasn't until Dad helped him the third time and informed the waiter that it was indeed pâté. Now, as we know, Steve is a well-travelled chap. He's been off world, and it's another sort of food-related story. And this was when him and his mate Dave were in Australia. It was about 10 years ago, wasn't it, when you were out there? I think they were in Melbourne, and they met. I think the first thing was they met a fellow Preston North End fan. I'd tell you this: if you see a Preston North End fan outside of Lancashire, it feels like you've won the lottery. The funny thing about this North End fan, he was this 20-stone monster. So Steve and Dave asked him, well, where can we go and get some food? So this gargantuan North End fan took him to this restaurant where he told the chaps to order an elephant burger. Now, hopefully it wasn't elephant. Do you eat that in Australia?
No.
That's all right, fine. That's good. Phew. But it was this massive 20-ounce burger, which when it was brought out, this huge P&E fan devoured in about 5 minutes. Dave, he sort of soldered on, but it took him he gave up after about 10 minutes. But Steve is a chap who, however small or large the food is, whatever kind of food he's eating, he'll always give it a go. And it took him about an hour of struggling to get it down. The sweat was dripping down his face. He was undoing his top button. After about an hour, he did manage to finish it. Fair play, Steve. And I think that just goes to show, you're a chap who likes his food. However big or small, you will finish it. And that probably explains why you've come back from all your holidays with some kind of gastric problem. Now, with all this food that he eats, he's got to be fed. He needs to keep himself a little bit trim. I don't know how you do it, but I've heard you do it by playing football or squash. But one day, the lad didn't get his bit of exercise in, so he's having to run into work. Now, he was absolutely delighted when on his way he was running in, someone pumped at him. Now, of course, Steve being ecstatic, because obviously admiring his godlike physique, he had to relay this story to his mates in the pub countless times. And everyone had heard it, and everyone was getting pretty sick of it. And the only one who hadn't heard it was Ian. And just as Ian turned up, Steve was about to go up to him and tell him this story. But Ian said, "All right, Steve, I saw you running today, pumped at you." He didn't respond. Now, who's had 10 minutes in this bet? Anybody?
Keep going, another
Keep
20
going.
seconds.
Well,
13's good.
14's good. I'll take that 20 quid off you later. Now, this is the part where I've got to describe Steve and Claire's relationship, and I was having real difficulty with this because, I mean, how can you describe this loving couple within such a short period of time? And it wasn't until today when I was stood in the chapel as stood next to Steve, looking at him with his little grey hairs peeping out of his
Just for grooms.
Sorry. You should have died, mate, trust me. We have been doing it the last 3 years, haven't we? Yeah, so I stood next to him and I saw Claire was being led in dangerously along the aisle with that lovely veil. I looked at Steve and I just thought, you're just completely punching above your weight, you. And I've got to say, the only thing whiter than that dress was Steve's teeth, which I know he just had clean before this. Very nice. How much were they again? Very much. Now, Steve and Claire have been together for 7 years, and prior to the engagement, they are, an absolutely lovely couple who, have travelled to South America. I think what sort of encapsulates the love that this relationship has was that photograph they have of Steve and Claire on the salt flats, which I believe is still on the front of the programme. I think what got me your sort of welcoming to our family was when you started doing an old Robinson tradition. Now, when us Robinsons say hello and goodbye to each other, we like to do sort of a little football chant, and we go, "Who are ya? Who are ya? Who are ya?" at each other. Now, this all stems from when Steve was a young lad. He was standing at the bus stop, and me, Dad, and our little cat. We'd pick up the little cat and go with Steve while he was at the bus stop, and it's carried on from there. Now, I think Claire, when she first met us, was a little bit perplexed by all this and just thought, I'm not doing any of this, this sounds rubbish. And even if, she was probably worried that if she does join in, we're just going to mock her for it. But honestly, when you started doing that to me was when you were, well with the top. I mean, Claire is is a fantastic person for Steve, and she's always the life and soul of the party, especially when we've all got together. And I can remember one Christmas karaoke we had, I think it was last year, us Robinsons, oh dear. It was just awful, basically. And then Claire steps up and does a lovely rendition of a Cause song called I Never Loved You Anyway. And I thought that was a great way of dumping him. I think, thankfully, that wasn't the case, and not so long after that, Steve did the honourable thing, proposed to Claire, and here we are today. So I would just like you to all stand up now, please. And to raise a toast to Steve and to Claire. Steve and Claire. Sorry, who won the bet then?